Saturday, June 13th, 2020. Just before dawn, in the quiet village of Reiden, Essex, a man stepped out of a party with his two sons. Moments later, the night sky erupted in flashes of gunfire. 8 shots, then silence. When detectives arrived, one name was already echoing through the streets. A man the police had hunted for years. Someone who knew exactly how to vanish. 2 years earlier, in broad daylight across Greater Manchester, another ambush had unfolded. 5 bullets were fired on the streets of Ashton-under-Lyne. One man didn't survive. It was a calculated hit, a message delivered in the midst of a brutal turf war. By the time officers smashed down his door, the suspect was gone. His name soon appeared among Britain's most wanted. 2 fugitives, 2 investigations, a trail that stretched from Manchester to Morocco. Each man believed he had outsmarted the law until the knock came from half a world away. This is the story of those who ran in the relentless pursuit that brought them back home. Let's dive straight into the case, the Teflon Don. Long before the name Nana Oppon appeared on Britain's most wanted list, it was already whispered in the back rooms of East London's underworld. A name spoken with equal parts respect and fear. To detectives, he was a hardened and calculating criminal. To those who knew him, he was the man who always walked free. His legend began forming in May 2010, during his own birthday celebration at the Sugar Lounge. What was meant to be a night of music and laughter ended in blood and chaos. Outside the venue, a shootout erupted between rival groups. 2 men, Eugene Brown and Patrick Ford, were shot dead in the street. A third man, Michael Smith, was left clinging to life after taking 6 bullets, 1 to the head. Oppon was accused of arming one of the gunmen and identifying the victims moments before the attack. Twice he faced trial for murder. Twice the jury couldn't reach a verdict. By 2012, only 1 charge remained: perverting the course of justice after he lied to police about his role that night. He served 2 years and walked free once again. Just 4 years later, violence caught up with him once more. In May 2014, at a birthday party in Dagenham, a young father named Ashley Laddie was beaten and stabbed to death outside a community hall. Witnesses recalled a scene of pure chaos, shouting, kicking, punching, and stabbing in a frenzy. Among those charged was Nana Oppon. Once again, he faced a murder charge, and once again, he escaped it. This time, he admitted only to causing grievous bodily harm with intent, a lesser charge that earned him 4 years behind bars before release. To investigators, it had become a pattern. Every time violence erupted, Oppon's name surfaced, yet convictions slipped away. He was calculated, disciplined, and detached. Never the one pulling the trigger, but always close to those who did. By the late 2010s, detectives had a nickname for him: the Teflon Don, a man steeped in drugs, guns, and revenge, untouched by the crime swirling around him. But in 2020, that untouchable image would finally begin to crack. And this time, there would be no walking free. Robert Powell was not a gangster. He wasn't a rival dealer or an enforcer. At 50 years old, he was a father of 3, a grandfather of 2, and a respected figure in London's music scene. To his friends, he was simply Fox, a music manager, a connector, a man who moved effortlessly between 2 worlds, the stage and the street. Powell had worked with several rising artists, including rapper Dutchie, whose growing fame had drawn him into circles of power, money, and danger. Fox was respected, but his world was one where reputation ruled, and a single rumor, a careless insult, or an unpaid debt could turn deadly. By 2020, the line between the music industry and organized crime had blurred beyond recognition. Powell's name had begun surfacing in conversations tied to Nana Oppon's network, a group long linked to Class A drugs and violent feuds. Detectives would later testify that Oppon held a personal grudge against Powell, a tension rooted in pride, business, and betrayal. The exact cause remains unclear, but one thing was certain: Robert Powell had been marked. In the weeks before the shooting, he grew cautious, aware of whispers around his name, but no one could have predicted what was coming. On the night of June 12, 2020, Powell attended a private party in Reiden, Essex. a quiet village near Harlow. It was meant to be a laid-back evening. Good food, good music, familiar faces. But somewhere outside that party, others were waiting. The setup and the shooting, a brutal murder mystery. In the weeks leading up to the killing, a plan was already taking shape. Encrypted messages later uncovered revealed how Nana Oppon and his crew had been watching Robert Powell's every move, waiting for the perfect moment and the perfect place to strike. As early as June 5th, 2020, the group had considered making their move. That night's intended target was a block party in Beckton, East London, but the hit was called off. According to the message logs, Oppon had grown uneasy. Too many police in the area. The mission was postponed, but never canceled. 8 days later, in the early hours of Saturday, June 13th, the operation went live. Inside a small private venue, the last guests were filtering out from a late-night birthday celebration. Among them, Robert Powell and his 2 adult sons. Outside, the street was calm, but in the distance, 3 vehicles were closing in. A Ford Kuga, a Vauxhall Zafira, and a Toyota Prius. The Prius, driven by Isra Shah, acted as the lookout. The Zafira carried backup, and the Kuga, fitted with clone plates, was the strike car. CCTV from nearby homes later showed the convoys circling the area again and again in the hour before the attack. They were waiting for one moment, the moment Robert Powell stepped outside. When he finally did, the Kuga slowed to a crawl. The passenger door swung open. A gunman emerged, armed with a 9mm pistol. 8 rapid shots shattered the silence. Powell was hit multiple times, collapsing beside a parked Ford Mondeo. One bullet ripped through the air, striking 2 women nearby, passing clean through one before embedding itself in the other's ankle. Within seconds, the gunman was gone. The Kuga roared off, followed by the Zafira and the Prius. By the time the first witnesses reached Powell's body, the shooters were long gone. Later, CCTV would trace the fleeing convoy, speeding out of Reiden, through Oppong, and then beyond Essex entirely. The police investigation, inside a murder manhunt. When the first 999 calls came in, Essex police officers arrived to a scene that spoke volumes. This was no random shooting. 8 shell casings lay scattered across Water Lane. The placement, the angle, the caliber, every detail pointed to a professional hit. Detectives from the Serious Crime Directorate took charge, quickly realizing this wasn't a neighborhood feud. It was an execution, carried out with military precision. Their first step, mapping the CCTV grid around Reiden. Dozens of cameras were pulled and reviewed frame by frame, tracing the 3 suspicious vehicles that had entered the village minutes before the attack. Using automatic number plate recognition, investigators found that the Ford Kuga was running clone plates. The Zafira and Prius had no link to any local residents, but as detectives expanded their search across Essex and into East London, a familiar pattern appeared. The same cars had been spotted days earlier near properties tied to Nana Oppon. Forensic teams recovered 9mm shell casings from the scene. Ballistics matched the ammunition type to rounds discussed on Oppon's EncroChat device. The encrypted messages, decoded later, revealed a coordinated plan involving multiple cars and backup drivers. By late June, the pieces had come together. Nana Oppon, 43, from Stratford, East London, was identified as the suspected mastermind, and likely the gunman. Isra Shah, 40, from Brentwood, Essex, was believed to be the lookout in the Toyota Prius. A third man, Tetopi Adinka, linked to both through phone data in CCTV, appeared in vehicles tied to the convoy before and after the hit. Together, detectives believed they had orchestrated the meticulously planned execution that ended Robert Powell's life. Raids swept through addresses across London and Essex. At one site, officers discovered traces of gunshot residue inside a garage used by known associates. At another, they seized phones later connected to EncroChat handles that had communicated directly with Oppong in the days leading up to the shooting. But when the warrants were served, all 3 men had vanished. For investigators, it was like chasing ghosts, a murder with no suspects left on British soil. Still, the trail wasn't cold. Somewhere deep inside the encrypted world of EncroChat, the truth was waiting, ready to be unlocked. Cracking the messages. inside a true murder investigation. By the middle of 2020, investigators were running out of leads. The suspects had vanished. The murder weapon was nowhere to be found, and the trail was fading fast. But what Nana Oppon and his crew didn't know was that the digital world had already turned against them. At that very moment, EncroChat, the encrypted network criminals trusted most, had been secretly breached. Among the thousands of handles exposed, one username stood out: ENS. The user spoke like a boss, giving orders, planning logistics, and talking about the thing in Essex. Another account, tagged Slick, appeared in contact with him almost every day. Detectives would later confirm that ENS was Nana Oppon and Slick was Isra Shah. The messages painted a chilling picture, the build-up to the Reiden shooting, step by step. In early June, ENS was seen ordering 9mm ammunition, confirming payment, and arranging delivery. On June 5th, the very night the first Becton hit was called off, Slick sent a frustrated message. "How do we plan to do this? I'm tired of waiting, bro." It was the voice of a lookout, anxious, impatient, ready to move. Then silence. Until June 13th, the night Robert Powell was gunned down. The timestamps on the EncroChat messages lined up almost perfectly with the CCTV footage showing the convoy arriving in Reiden. Just hours after the killing, ENS deleted large parts of his chat history and sent one final message: all clear. Handle your side digital forensics teams at the National Crime Agency later confirmed that Oppon's handset had been wiped remotely 2 days later, but it was already too late. The mirrored data had been preserved through the EncroChat breach. For the first time, investigators had undeniable digital proof, not rumors, not speculation, but evidence tying Oppon and Shah directly to the orchestration of the hit. The man once called the Teflon Don had finally left fingerprints that couldn't be wiped away. The manhunt across continents, a global true crime pursuit. With this breakthrough, the investigation shifted gears. From a local murder case to a global manhunt, detectives now knew exactly who they were chasing, but all three men were gone. Within days of the Reiden shooting, Nana Oppon had slipped out of the UK using fake documents. He crossed into Spain, moving between safe houses linked to drug traffickers. Then his trail vanished, until new intelligence revealed he was heading south toward Morocco. Meanwhile, Isra Shah had also gone underground in Spain, switching aliases and burner phones to avoid capture. Topia Dinka disappeared completely, believed to have fled using forged West African documents. By late 2021, the National Crime Agency and Essex Police had joined forces, forming an international task force to track the fugitives. Oppon's criminal past made him a high-priority target. He wasn't just wanted for Robert Powell's murder, he was also under investigation by the Metropolitan Police for drug trafficking and firearms offenses. His record, a seasoned gangster who had slipped past murder charges before, earned him a place on the NCA's most wanted list in 2022. Working with Interpol, investigators issued red notices, global arrest alerts ordering foreign police to detain the suspects on site. Oppon's image, a mugshot and grainy CCTV still, was released publicly across Europe, his face plastered across Spain and North Africa. Behind the scenes, intelligence teams tracked encrypted chatter, hinting that Oppon was using contacts in Spain's drug ports to arrange passage into Morocco. But what he didn't realize was that the net was closing. In September 2022, Moroccan border officers at Tangier port noticed something off. A man entering the country from Spain on a Maltese passport that didn't quite match his face. A fingerprint scan confirmed the truth. The man was Nana Oppon, wanted for murder, firearms offenses, and drug trafficking. After 2 years on the run, the Teflon Don was finally caught, not in a gunfight, but by routine border control. Oppon was quietly detained by Morocco's General Directorate for National Security, and his capture was kept secret for months while extradition proceedings began. For Essex Police and the NCA, it was the moment they'd been waiting for. One fugitive was finally in custody. The others would soon follow. Extradition and capture. The final fall. For 9 long months, British authorities worked tirelessly with the Moroccan Ministry of Justice to bring him home. The National Crime Agency's Joint International Crime Center led the coordination, assisted by the Crown Prosecution Service Extradition Unit and British diplomats based in Rabat. Every form, every authorization, every transfer order passed through multiple layers of approval. Finally, in June 2023, it happened. Nana Oppon was flown back to the UK, escorted by armed officers. Bodycam footage released by Essex police later showed him sitting in the back of a van, handcuffed, silent, and emotionless, simply nodding as the charges were read out. The man who had spent years outsmarting the system was back where it all began. Just weeks earlier, his co-accused Isra Shah had also been returned to Britain. He'd been captured in Spain the previous December, after months of surveillance led officers to a small flat near Alicante. At dawn, Spanish police stormed the building. Shah didn't fight. By March 2023, he was extradited to the UK under heavy guard. Police later released clips of both men in custody, a striking contrast. Oppong cold and calculating, Shah withdrawn and subdued. Behind the scenes, detectives were already assembling the mountain of evidence that would finally bring them face-to-face in court. Detective Superintendent Steve Jennings, who had led the 4-year investigation, called it a defining moment. "We won't stop until everyone responsible is brought to justice, the trial and sentencing. Justice at last." After nearly 4 years of detective work, international extraditions and silence, the case finally reached Woolwich Crown Court in May 2024. The courtroom was full. Detectives, prosecutors, and members of Robert Powell's family, all waiting for one word they had dreamed of hearing: guilty. The prosecution, led by Justin Rouse KC, laid out a detailed case built piece by piece over years. Oppon denied everything. He claimed he had nothing to do with it, that his name had been wrongly linked to the encrypted handle ENS. Shah admitted being at the scene, but insisted he was only there to sell drugs, not to kill. Both men tried to push blame toward Tetopi Adinka, still wanted by police, but the jury didn't buy it. On 28 May 2024, both men were found guilty of murder and possession of a firearm with intent to endanger life. Oppon was also convicted of grievous bodily harm for the injuries suffered by the 2 women caught in the crossfire. The sentences were heavy. Nana Oppon, life in prison with a minimum of 38 years. Isra Shah, life with a minimum of 26 years. Rivalries and turf wars. The road that led to blood. By the spring of 2018, tensions in Ashton-under-Lyne's drug scene were reaching a breaking point. What looked like an ordinary Greater Manchester suburb was, beneath the surface, a battleground. Rival crime groups competing for control of Class A drug supplies. At the center of one network stood Luke Graham, 31, a father of 2 and, according to detectives, a local supplier dealing in cocaine and cannabis across Tameside. Opposing him was Wade Cox, 34, an established dealer with deeper connections across Manchester's organized crime world. Cox's operation was bigger, better funded, and, as one judge would later note, far more willing to use violence to hold territory. Investigators later told the court that Graham and Cox were rivals in the same trade, a feud that had spiraled into open hatred. Prosecutor Michael Brady KC described it simply: "This rivalry explains the sheer level of hostility that led to this shooting." Standing beside Cox was Callum Halpin, a loyal enforcer who handled business when things got personal, backed by several smaller associates ready to erase any trace of what came next. By June 2018, the feud had reached its breaking point. The threats became plans, and in encrypted messages later recovered by police, Cox's crew spoke openly about sorting the problem once and for all. Soon those words would turn into bullets, and a quiet suburban street would become the stage for an execution. The trap on Birch Street, a deadly setup. It was Wednesday, June 13th, 2018, a warm, bright afternoon in Ashton-under-Lyne, when the trap was finally sprung. A confrontation years in the making was about to reach its brutal end. The setup was simple and cruelly effective. A local drug user, known on the streets as Peanut, was chosen as bait. Someone Luke Graham knew and occasionally supplied. Messages were passed around claiming that Peanut was in trouble, that rival dealers were threatening him outside a house on Birch Street. Graham, loyal and impulsive, didn't hesitate. He agreed to check on him. He took along his close friend, Anton Varigotta, and together they drove to the address in a white Volkswagen Caddy, arriving shortly after 4:40 p.m. Minutes earlier, CCTV had captured a stolen Audi A3 turning into Birch Street. Inside were Wade Cox, Callum Halpin, and another associate. The Audi slowed to a stop a few doors down, waiting. When Graham and Varigotta arrived, Graham got out to speak to someone near the end of the street, completely unaware that inside that very house, Cox, Halpin, and their accomplice were lying in ambush. The call for help had been a trap. As Graham returned to the van and climbed into the passenger seat, Halpin suddenly appeared beside the door. In one swift motion, he slammed it shut, locking them in, cutting off any escape. Then from just a few feet away, Wade Cox raised a handgun and opened fire. 5 shots. 3 bullets tore into Luke Graham, killing him instantly. Another hit Anton Varigotta, leaving him critically wounded but alive. The entire ambush lasted less than a minute. When police and paramedics arrived, they found Graham slumped lifeless in the driver's seat. Despite desperate attempts to revive him, he was pronounced dead at the scene. The escape. Calm after chaos. In the chaos that followed, the killers moved with chilling precision. The stolen Audi A3, the same car seen moments earlier creeping down Birch Street, roared away from the scene at high speed. Neighbors later described the sound. Screeching tires fading into the distance, followed by the echo of terrified screams. Children who had been playing outside were hurried indoors by their parents. What had been a quiet weekday afternoon had turned into a street soaked in fear. Within minutes, CCTV and ANPR cameras picked up the Audi racing out of Ashton-under-Lyne, heading toward Gorton, 6 miles away. Less than an hour later, residents there reported smoke rising from a narrow back street. Fire crews arrived to find a car engulfed in flames, burned down to its shell. Forensics would later confirm it was the same Audi A3 used in the Birch Street murder. Every trace inside, fingerprints, DNA, gunshot residue, destroyed in the fire. While the car burned, Callum Halpin remained unnervingly calm. Within an hour of the shooting, he was spotted at the Corner Shop pub in Ashton, sitting at the bar scrolling through his phone, chatting casually. Later that same day, he was seen again, this time at a local gym, relaxed, laughing, as if nothing had happened. Detectives from Greater Manchester Police's Major Incident Team knew this was no random act. The precision, the timing, the cold execution, all signs pointed to organized crime. Within hours, they launched Operation Cranbrook, an inquiry that would soon become one of the biggest organized crime investigations the region had seen in years. For families on Birch Street, it was a nightmare that would never fade. A daylight execution carried out in front of their homes on an ordinary Wednesday afternoon. Police investigation, piecing together the crime. The forensic work began almost immediately after the shooting. Every shell casing, every shattered piece of glass was carefully collected, photographed, and logged. Ballistics experts soon confirmed the rounds were 9mm bullets, the same caliber commonly tied to organized crime networks operating across Tameside. Though the murder weapon itself was never found, microscopic traces from the ammunition provided enough evidence to compare against firearms already linked to local OCGs, organized crime groups. Next, detectives turned to technology. Hours of CCTV footage and ANPR camera data from Ashton Town Center to Gorton traced the Audi's full journey, before and after the ambush. Using cell site mapping, investigators began tracking mobile signals active in the area, gradually piecing together a timeline of movements. The data revealed that phones associated with Wade Cox and Callum Halpin moved in perfect sync, both before the shooting and in the minutes that followed. As the evidence tightened, so did the digital trail. Text messages, call logs, and encrypted chats painted a picture of coordination and control. Discussions about getaway plans, swapping vehicles, and disposing of phones to derail investigators. Detectives later discovered that within days of the killing, the same contacts resurfaced on new devices, all registered under fake names, but communicating with the same inner circle. Over the following months, police began making arrests across Greater Manchester. One by one, lower-level associates were picked up. Couriers, drivers, and those tied to the stolen Audi. Some suspects were even caught at airports trying to flee the country as the investigation closed in. But amid the wave of arrests, one key figure slipped through the net. And for the next 4 years, that man would disappear completely, living like a ghost, always just out of reach. Callum Halpin, fugitive on the run. Greater Manchester Police launched a massive manhunt under Operation Cranbrook, determined to track down the missing suspect. Investigators traced Callum Halpin's final movements through border checks, flight manifests, and financial records. By the end of 2018, the truth became clear. Halpin had fled the UK, vanishing into mainland Europe under a string of fake identities. Using forged passports and contacts from Manchester's underworld, he managed to settle on Spain's Costa del Sol, a region notorious for harboring British fugitives among its bustling expat crowd. At one point, he was even living alongside Alex Mail, another wanted man facing serious drug trafficking charges. Then in 2021, the National Crime Agency and Crime Stoppers named him among the UK's most wanted fugitives, releasing his image across Europe as part of Operation Captura, a campaign to bring high-risk criminals to justice. Posters from Manchester to Malaga carried his face, warning the public that he was dangerous, violent, and potentially armed. On May 30th, 2022, Spanish police, acting on intelligence from the NCA and GMP, surrounded a flat near Alicante. Inside, they found Halpin hiding in a small apartment, trying desperately to conceal his identity. He surrendered without a fight. Under a European arrest warrant, he was taken into custody for the murder of Luke Graham and the attempted murder of Anton Varagata. Months later, after lengthy legal proceedings, Halpin was extradited back to the UK in early 2023. The man who once believed he could disappear among the Costa del Sol's sun-drenched crowds was finally back to face justice for a killing that had haunted Ashton-under-Lyne for years. The trials and sentencing. The murder of Luke Graham would be fought in 2 separate trials years apart. The first took place in 2019 at Manchester Crown Court. In the dock sat Wade Cox alongside several associates, Christopher Atkinson, Ryan West, Kane Cornforth, and Dean Dodd, accused of helping the killers after the attack. The jury was presented with overwhelming evidence: ballistic reports, phone data, and CCTV footage connecting each man to the aftermath of the crime. When the verdicts were read, the courtroom fell silent. Wade Cox was found guilty of murder and grievous bodily harm against Anton Varagata and sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 36 years. Christopher Atkinson, 33, from Manchester, received 5 years for assisting an offender. Kane Cornforth, 29, from Gorton, was sentenced to 7 years for helping destroy the getaway car and arranging false alibis. Dean Dodd, 29, from Openshaw, was given 4 years for attempting to mislead police during the early investigation. Ryan West, 30, from Droylsden, was handed 2 years and 6 months for providing logistical support to those on the run. Then came the second chapter, the Callum Halpin trial, held in 2023. Halpin denied all involvement, claiming he was nowhere near the scene that day. But the evidence told another story. The judge described the crime as a public execution driven by control, greed, and fear. On February the 17th, 2023, Halpin was found guilty of murder and grievous bodily harm and sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 30 years. What are your thoughts on these cases and the sentences handed down? Share your opinions in the comments. We'd love to hear what you think. And if you enjoyed this breakdown and want to stay updated on more UK crime stories, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode of UK Crime Hub.